a fascinating thought, isn't it? English, spoken by literally billions across the globe, yet the moment you cross the Atlantic, it's like you're navigating a subtly different linguistic landscape. That's exactly what we're plunging into today, our topic. The endlessly intriguing variations between British English and American English.
Indeed. And for this deep dive, you've gathered a really comprehensive set of materials for us to explore. We've got British and American English, a comparative overview, some insightful excerpts from Mind the Gap, which is a guide to understanding these variations, and even a British and American English study guide with a quiz so we can really test our understanding later, perhaps.
Exactly. And our mission for you joining us on this linguistic journey is to extract the most interesting and useful nuggets from all of this. We want to help you grasp the key distinctions, appreciate the nuances, and even, understand some of the history and culture that have shaped these two remarkable versions of the same language, all without getting bogged down in overly technical details. Think of this as your express ticket to understanding the fascinating story behind these transatlantic linguistic cousins.
Precisely. We want to illuminate not just what the differences are, but also, where possible, hint at why they might have arisen in the way they did. It gives you, a richer understanding of both dialects and the cultures they reflect.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Where did this divergence even begin? It's not as simple as one day deciding to spell color without a U, is it? What's the backstory here?
No, not at all. The foundational point, as all our sources underscore, is their shared ancestry. English was brought to North America by British colonists, mainly in the 17th and 18th centuries.
Okay.
However, this is a crucial point. Those colonists didn't bring a single uniform version of English. It was more of a medley, as one source puts it, a collection of regional dialects from across Britain during the early modern period.
Right, like Shakespeare's time.
Yeah.
Not exactly standardized yet.
Exactly. So it was already a bit of a linguistic patchwork quilt from the start. And then you introduce the small matter of a giant ocean between them.
Yeah, that Atlantic Ocean factor.
Precisely. That geographical separation played an undeniable role. It slowed communication and prevented the consistent adoption of linguistic innovations from one region to the other. The American colonies developed relatively independently from Britain, linguistically speaking.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What little shifts back then became major divides later on?
It really does. And what I find particularly fascinating is the idea that sometimes American English has actually preserved older forms of the language.
Yeah.
Almost like a linguistic time capsule.
Really? How so?
That's a very insightful way to frame it. It's quite true. Take rhoticity, the pronunciation of the or sound after vowels.
Like in car or hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
During the colonization era, pronouncing that or was common in Britain, but over time it largely faded away in Southern British English, which became the basis for RP, received pronunciation. Meanwhile, General American mostly held on to that R sound.
Huh. So the American way is actually closer to the older British way in that case.
In that specific instance, yes. Another great example is the past participle of get. The use of gotten, meaning obtained or become, was once prevalent in Britain, but gradually fell out of favor there.
But we still use gotten all the time in the U.S. I've gotten used to it.
Exactly. It survived in America. These instances really highlight how language evolves in different ways when populations are separated.
That's genuinely surprising. Okay, so separation explains some drift. But what about all the new words and expressions that popped up in America? The environment must have played a role.
Oh, absolutely. The unique American environment was a powerful engine for linguistic innovation. The colonists encountered a completely new world, unfamiliar plants, animals, landscapes. They needed words for these things.
Right, things they didn't have back home.
Precisely. This led to a significant amount of borrowing from various indigenous languages. Words like raccoon, skunk, hickory, squash, they all have Native American origins. It's a direct linguistic link.
Makes perfect sense.
And it wasn't just Native American languages. They also borrowed from other European colonizing powers. Spanish gave us words like canyon, rodeo, alligator.
Okay.
French contributed prairie, levee. Dutch gave us cookie, boss, stoop. It really underscores the multicultural fabric of early America.
And a real melting pot, linguistically, too.
Absolutely. And beyond just adopting new words, existing English words also took on new meanings in America. Semantic shift, we call it. Consider creek. In America, it became a general term for a small stream.
Yeah?
Its use might have been more specific in Britain, and corn came to specifically mean maize, whereas in Britain, it was a broader term for grain.
So the new environment even reshaped familiar words. Fascinating. Okay, so environment, borrowing. Now let's talk about Noah Webster. He sounds like a key figure.
Oh, undeniably. Noah Webster was pivotal.
All right.
Fervent nationalist, as one source calls him. He strongly believed America needed its own distinct linguistic identity, separate from what he saw as the perceived corruptions and aristocratic affectations of British English. Language was part of national identity for him.
So he wasn't just compiling a dictionary. He was like actively trying to forge an American English.
Exactly. His most significant contribution was An American Dictionary of the English Language from 1828. It wasn't just a word list. It deliberately introduced spelling reforms.
Ah, here we go.
His aim was to make spelling more rational, phonetic, and distinct from British English. He wanted a spelling system that reflected American pronunciation and broke from British conventions.
And those are the spelling differences we still see today, right? Like color without the U and center with an
Precisely those. The preference for or instead of R, color, humor, favor, and instead of theater, leader, center. That's largely Webster's legacy. He thought they were simpler, more logical.
It's pretty remarkable, one person having that much impact. What was happening in Britain around the same time? Were they standardizing too?
Yes, standardization was also underway in Britain, though maybe driven by slightly different things. You had Samuel Johnson's dictionary earlier in 1755, aiming to codify the language.
Okay.
And later, the rise of received pronunciation, or RP, became associated with social prestige and influenced pronunciation standards, like that move towards non-rhoticity we mentioned.
So different paths. Webster pushing for American distinction, Britain consolidating around RP and Johnson spellings, more or less.
Exactly. And a crucial takeaway from all this really is that neither British nor American English is older or more correct. They're just two equally valid branches of the same linguistic tree, each shaped by its own unique history and culture.
Different journeys, not better or worse.
I got it.
Okay, we've laid the historical groundwork. Now let's delve into the specifics, the actual linguistic differences people might encounter, and I think the most obvious place to start is vocabulary.
Absolutely. Vocabulary is definitely the most immediate and noticeable difference, the everyday words people use.
Right. Let's walk through some examples, maybe by category, like household items. You take a lift. In Britain,
we take an elevator.
You live in a flat.
An apartment here. You threw rubbish in a bin.
It's a trash can or garbage can. You turn on the tap.
We turn on the faucet. You cook on a cooker, which includes the hob.
We use a stove, and the top part is the stovetop or burners. It's funny how even basic appliances have different names.
And for babies, a nappy versus a diaper, a dummy versus a pacifier, a cot versus a crib.
A whole different nursery lexicon than furniture. Their wardrobe is our closet. Their chest of drawers is often our dresser.
Right. They might sit on a sofa or settee.
We usually say couch or sofa. Sofa seems pretty common ground there. Their curtains might be our drapes.
But we use curtains too, maybe for lighter ones.
True. And they might hoover the floor using the brand name.
While we vacuum. Okay, on to food. This is a big one.
Yeah.
A British biscuit is definitely not an American cookie. Not at all. Our biscuit is more like their scone, maybe. Yeah. And their biscuit is our cookie.
Exactly. And their crisps are our potato chips.
While their chips are our French fries. Very important distinction.
Crucial. They eat sweets.
We eat candy. They have aubergine.
Eggplant. Courgette.
Coriander. The leaves.
Coriander is often cilantro here, though we use coriander for the seeds.
Right. They put rocket in salad.
We use arugula. They're spring onions.
Our scallions.
Right.
Or green onions. Mince.
These ground meat, and their general term pudding means?
Usually dessert for us, though our pudding is that specific creamy stuff like Jell-O brand.
Right. Food to go is takeaway.
Versus takeout and fizzy drink.
Is soda or pop, depending where you are in the States.
Moving to clothing. Their trousers are our pants. But big warning, their pants are our.
Underwear. Yeah, that's the classic mistake.
Definitely one to watch out for.
Yeah.
Their jumper is our sweater. Trainers are sneakers. Wellies.
Or rubber boots or galoshes.
On the road, motorway versus highway or freeway. Car park versus parking lot.
Petrol versus gas or gasoline.
The boot of the car is the trunk. The bonnet is the hood.
Windscreen is windshield. A flat tire? T-Y-R-E.
Is a flat tire, T-I-R-E.
Okay, work and education. They take a holiday, which can be a vacation or just a day off.
We usually say vacation for the long break and holiday for the specific day, like Christmas.
Got it. Their CV is our resume, mostly.
Right, though CV in the U.S. is often used more for academic contexts,
And the school confusion. Their state school is funded by the government.
which is what we call a public school. But their public
Yeah.
school is actually a private fee-paying one.
Total opposite. Wow.
It's really confusing. Waiting in a queue is waiting in line. Post is mail. Post box is mailbox.
Postman is mailman or letter carrier.
You get medicine at a chemist.
We go to a drugstore or pharmacy. You use the toilet or loo.
We ask for the restroom or bathroom. Their garden is usually our yard.
Though we use garden for flowers or veggies specifically.
Right. And fortnight, meaning 2 weeks.
Almost never hear that in the U.S. And if the phone line is engaged,
It's busy here.
that's a lot. And as you said, those false friends like pants and biscuit are real traps.
They really are. It highlights how important context is.
Okay, so vocabulary is huge. What about spelling? We know Noah Webster got involved there.
Yes, spelling differences are largely down to Webster's reforms, and they're often quite systematic, which helps a bit.
Like the R versus OR ending.
Exactly. British English often keeps the U from French influence. Color, humor, favor, neighbor. American English drops it. Color, humor, favor, neighbor. Very consistent.
And the versus R.
Same idea. British center, theater, leader, meter. American reverses it. Center, theater, leader, meter.
Now, what about as versus s's? That one seems fuzzier.
It is a bit more nuanced. American English strongly prefers SIs and SIs organize, analyze, which is actually closer to the Greek roots.
Oh, interesting.
British English uses both I's and IDIs, though I's is very common. But fun fact, the Oxford Style Guide actually prefers IDIs too. So you see both in Britain, America is almost exclusively IDIs.
Okay, so more of a style choice in the UK sometimes. What about doubling consonants, like in traveling?
Ah, yes. British English often doubles the final consonant, especially L, when adding endings, even if the syllable isn't stressed. So traveling, traveled, modeling, jewelry.
Right.
American English typically only doubles the consonant if the final syllable is stressed. So traveling, traveled, modeling, jewelry. Stress is the key difference there.
Got it. And those A and O combinations, like in pediatric.
British English sometimes keeps those digraphs from Latin or Greek. Pediatric anesthesia, archaeology, maneuver. American English generally simplifies to just E, pediatric anesthesia, archaeology, maneuver.
And even in the UK, the simpler E form is getting more common now, isn't it?
Yes, usage is definitely shifting there.
And elance versus E, like defense.
Right. For some nouns, British uses enance, defense, offense, license, the noun. American tends towards ence, defense, offense, license, for both noun and verb.
And British distinguishes license noun and license verb, right? Same with practice and practice.
Correct. American English generally uses license and practice for both forms.
And then there are just those random one-offs. Gray versus gray.
Exactly. Gray, mostly British. Gray, mostly American. Program, UK versus program, US. Pajamas, UK versus tire.
Tire versus tire.
Whiskey versus whiskey.
Right. The E often signals Irish or American origin. Plow versus plow. Mold versus mold. Judgment with an E in the UK sometimes, but judgment is common too now.
Cozy versus cozy. Skeptical versus skeptical.
It's a real mix. The key thing, as the sources say, is consistency. Pick one style and stick to it in your writing.
Absolutely. Don't mix color and theater in the same document.
Exactly.
Okay, words and spelling covered. Now, let's talk grammar. How words are put together. What are the key grammatical distinctions? These are often more subtle, as you said, but they definitely add to the different flavor. They don't usually cause major confusion, but you notice them.
Like using the present perfect versus the simple past. That seems like a big one.
It is. British English often uses the present perfect for recent past actions with present relevance, especially with words like just, already, yet, I've just eaten, have you finished yet?
Okay.
American English often prefers the simple past in those cases. I just ate, did you finish yet?
So the British use emphasizes the present connection more strongly.
That seems to be the tendency, yes. Americans use present perfect too, of course, but maybe slightly less often in those specific contexts.
What about collective nouns, like team or government?
Ah, yes. British English often treats them as plural if thinking of the members. The team are playing well.
Right.
American English almost always treats them as singular. The team is playing well, though British English can use the singular too if thinking of the group as one unit.
Interesting nuance. And prepositions, those little words like at, on, in.
Lots of little differences there. Time, at the weekend, UK, versus on the weekend, US.
Okay.
Telling time. quarter past, both. But maybe quarter to UK versus
Yeah.
quarter of US before the hour.
In a street, UK versus on a street, US.
Yes.
At university, UK versus in college, US.
Right. And others, different to or from UK versus mostly different from US. Stay at home, UK versus stay home, US. Write to someone, UK versus write someone, US. Small shifts.
Tiny words, big impact on flow. What about auxiliary or helping verbs like shall or needn't?
Good point. British English uses shall more often, especially for suggestions with I or we, shall we go.
Yeah.
Americans usually use should.
Okay.
British English uses needn't quite a bit. You needn't worry. Americans typically say you don't need to worry.
And dare.
Yes. British English can use it like a modal. How dare you say that? American English almost always adds to. How do you dare to say that?
And different past participles. Learnt versus learned.
Yes. British often favors learnt, dreamt, burnt, spoiled, spilled. American prefers learned, dreamed, burned, spoiled, spilled, though both forms often exist and are understood in both places.
And back to got versus gotten.
Right. American English keeps gotten for obtained or become. I've gotten a new car. British English generally just uses got. I've got a new car.
And tag questions. It's nice out, isn't it?
Much more frequent in British English, often just to be conversational or seek agreement. Americans use them, but maybe less often or more for genuine questions.
And using do as a substitute, like I might do.
Yes, that's quite British. Are you coming? I might do. An American would probably just say I might or I might be.
Wow, subtle, but definitely adds up to a different feel.
Exactly. It's the accumulation of these small things.
Okay, we've navigated words, spelling, grammar. Now let's talk sound pronunciation. And like you said earlier, huge variation within both countries.
Absolutely. Crucial point. No single British accent or American accent. You've got RP, but also Cockney, Scouse, Geordie, Scottish, Welsh, tons. Same in the U.S. General American, Southern New York, Boston, Californian.
Right. But we can talk general differences between, say, RP and Genum as common reference points.
Yes, definitely. And the biggest one is probably rhoticity. That R sound again.
Right. Americans pronounce the R after vowels. British often don't unless another vowel follows.
Generally speaking, for RP and Genum, yes. So car, hard, bird, set, quite different. You hear the R clearly in Genum, less so or not at all in RP unless it links to a vowel.
Okay. What else? Vowel sounds.
Big differences there. The trap-bath split. Words like bath, path, laugh, dance.
How does that work?
In RP, those often have a broad ah sound, like in father. Be-ah.
Okay.
In Genum, they usually have the short A sound, like in trap. The ah, it's very noticeable.
Definitely heard that difference. What about the ah sound in lot or hot?
The lot vowel. In RP, it's typically short and rounded.
Mm-hmm.
In Genum, it's often unrounded closer to the father vowel sound, though there's variation. So hot can sound different.
In the long O in go or boat, the goat vowel?
Yes. Often a narrower diphthong in RP, starting further back. Genum often have a wider one, starting more central O. Subtle shift.
What about yaw dropping, like in tune or new?
Right. American English often drops the J sound after consonants like T, D, O, A, and tune, do, new. British English often keeps it to, do, new.
Like streamlining the sound and the T sound itself, butter becoming...
Exactly. That's flapping or tapping in American English. When T or D is between vowels, it often becomes that quick voiced sound. Water becomes water.
Right.
In RP, it's usually a clear T. Though other British accents might use a glottal stop instead, that catch in the throat, like in bowl for bottle.
And even word stress can differ.
Absolutely. Think advertisement, UK often, versus advertisement, US often. Controversy, UK versus controversy, US. Garage, UK versus garage, US. Laboratory, UK versus laboratory, US. And overall intonation, the melody of speech. RP can have a wider pitch range, falling intonation. Genum might be flatter, or sometimes use rising intonation, even on statements.
So many layers to the sound.
It really is. You need a lot of listening practice to pick it all up.
Okay, deep breath. We've covered the linguistic nuts and bolts. Now the really colorful stuff. Idioms, slang, colloquialism.
Yes, this is where culture really shines through and where misunderstandings can be, well, quite funny sometimes.
Or awkward. Let's trade some examples. If a Brit is knackered.
They're beat or exhausted in U.S. terms. If they're chuffed.
They're stoked or really pleased if something goes pear-shaped.
Or goes south or bombs over here.
A cock-up, a screw-up, or mess-up, something dodgy.
Sketchy or shady. And the classic danger zone, stroppy, UK means.
Cranky or irritable. Because pissed in the U.S. means angry.
But pissed in the UK usually means drunk. Very important distinction.
Huge. Okay, someone potty or bunkers.
Is nuts or crazy. A quid
Is a buck? To ring someone up?
is to call them up. A natter
Is a chap or shoot the breeze. Something brilliant.
is awesome or great. Your mate
Is your buddy or pal. Blue or bog.
is the John or restroom.
If you're run off your feet.
You're swamped or buried. To tell someone off.
Is to chew them out or reprimand them. If you're gobsmacked.
You're floored or astonished on tenterhooks.
Is on pins and needles. Wow, completely different picture sometimes.
Totally. And the advice is usually learn to understand them, but be careful using them yourself until you're really sure of the nuance. Slang especially changes fast and can be very regional.
Good advice. Okay, incredibly, even punctuation differs.
Yes, even the little dots and marks. Quotation marks. British traditionally uses single quotes first, then double inside. American does the opposite, double first, then single inside.
And where the commas and periods go relative to the quote marks.
Also different conventions. British often uses logical punctuation outside unless part of the quote. American typically puts periods and commas inside the closing quote mark regardless. Typographical style.
Visual difference on the page.
Yeah.
And dates, the big one.
Oh, yes. Potential chaos there. British is day, month, year. 14/10/2023.
American is month, day, year. 2/1/4/2023. You have to know which one you're looking at.
Absolutely critical for scheduling anything internationally.
Format.
British often uses the 24-hour clock or a period in 12-hour time. 2:30 p.m. American primarily uses 12-hour with a colon. 2:30 p.m.
Titles. Mrs.
British usually omits the period. Mr. Mrs. Doctor. American includes it. Mr. Mrs. Doctor.
And floor numbering. Ground floor versus first floor.
Classic confusion for travelers.
Yeah.
British, ground floor is street level, floor above is first floor. American, street level is first floor, floor above is second floor. You could be waiting on the wrong level.
Definitely. And separating thousands in numbers.
British might use a space, 10,000, or a comma. American almost always uses a comma, 10,000. Both use a period for the decimal.
It's like slightly different operating systems for the same language.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, we've covered the mechanics, but language reflects culture, right? Any general tendencies there? Being careful about stereotypes, of course.
Right. Generalizations are tricky, but some tendencies are often discussed. Formality and directness, for example. British English is sometimes seen as more indirect, using understatement. That's not bad. Might mean, that's quite good.
Whereas an American might take not bad more literally.
Possibly. American English is often perceived as more direct. Humor styles can differ too. British humor often relies heavily on irony, sarcasm, understatement. American humor might be more overt sometimes.
And maybe levels of expressed enthusiasm.
That's another perception Americans sometimes seen as more outwardly expressive. Again, these are broad tendencies, not rules about individuals.
But it shows how culture weaves into language.
Absolutely. Language embodies culture.
So, looking ahead, where are things going? More divergence, or are we converging?
That's the big question. There are forces pulling both ways. Globalization, American media influence that pushes towards convergence. You hear more Americanisms in British English, especially among younger people.
Yeah, like movie instead of film.
Exactly. But dialects also evolve independently. New slang pops up locally. Regional accents remain strong, sometimes even resurgent. Institutions like schools and media reinforce local standards.
So it's a push and pull.
Precisely. And you have global English emerging, used by non-native speakers, which might borrow from both or prioritize clarity over specific dialect features.
So what's the likely future?
Probably continued dynamic tension. Some convergence, especially in vocabulary via media, but core differences in grammar, pronunciation, and established conventions are likely to persist. The distinct characters of BRE and AE will likely endure.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key message is the richness and diversity of English. British and American are two major, fascinating variations. Yes, there are differences, but mutual understanding is still very high. These variations aren't errors, they enrich the language.
It's not about right or wrong, better or worse.
Absolutely not. It's about appreciating the history and culture behind these dialects. Both are valid, vibrant, evolving forms of the same language.
So pay attention to these nuances. Enjoy them. They show language is alive and connected to culture. And maybe a final thought. With digital communication connecting us more than ever, How will that balance between convergence and divergence shift? What new forms of English might emerge from this constant interaction?
Compelling question indeed. Something to keep listening for.